Right, good evening. It's my pleasure to introduce Pete Doherty as our speaker tonight. Pete is one of the people behind our news. He's a senior journalist working on the BBC programme Today, and he has 30 years experience on the programme. He also is an award-winning video producer. When asked what his typical day was, he described 3 types of day: filming, editing, and setting up. In 2012, 100 years after the Titanic sank, he made a documentary on the effect of the sinking of the ship on the people of Southampton. He enjoys telling a story, and this evening he will tell a few stories about when things didn't go to plan and others that were unique experiences. So over to you, Pete.
Thank you. First thing I need to ask is, are you all South Today watchers?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, can you name me a reporter or presenter that's either current or from the past?
Alexis?
Amanda Piper.
Sorry? Amanda Piper?
Oh,
She's ITV.
Oh, Sally Taylor.
Sally
Yeah.
Taylor.
Sally
Yep.
Taylor, yeah.
The lady who does the news on 5.
Brian Husband. Is it Brian Husband?
Tony Husband.
Tony
Tony
Husband.
Husband, yeah.
Bruce Parker.
Bruce Parker, very good.
Yeah.
Remember him well.
Can you think any earlier than that? Bruce is pretty early. He's about 1968 he started. Anybody earlier than that?
Yeah.
You remember anybody? Sarah?
The two that normally come up
on
is...
national television now, Peter, isn't there?
Sorry?
Isn't there somebody who moved on to national television?
Lots have in the past.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
over the years, Mike Bushell.
Jenny Murray.
Who?
Yeah.
Jenny Murray. We also have Lizzie Greenwood Hughes. We have Roger Johnson. Roger Johnson actually is a presenter up in Manchester, but he also does the breakfast bulletins, breakfast program on a Sunday. Who else has gone to network?
Alistair Stewart.
Alex Forsyth.
Yeah.
Gone to network. Jess Parker. Trying to think of some other ones.
There's a couple on Channel 5.
Oh, Danny Sinha.
Danny Sinha, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things we do notice is that sometimes people do get kind of confused a little bit with ITV, but it's what the two that do tend to come up a lot, and one of them has just left, is Bryony Leyland and Roger Finn. And Roger's just taken redundancy, and so he's left, which is really sad because many people remember him from when he did Newsround. He replaced John Craven, so he's a bit of a legend, and it was very, very nice to work with.
He stopped.
So I've been at the BBC since 1989, and I basically got a job for 3 weeks working on something called the 80s program, which was 1989. They did a recap of all the stories in the 80s, and some of it was on film and some of it was on videotape. So they hired me for 3 weeks, and then a job and the job wasn't advertised. And basically, I was up against another assistant film editor who was also a bricklayer, and he couldn't do mornings because he had to do some navvy work, and so I got the job. And it's just really a bit. It's one of those things that you get into TV by accident, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I did 3 weeks, and then from that moment, they thought I worked quite well in the team, and the job came up about a month later, and I started my career as a technical operator in the BBC in Southampton, and I've been there ever since. And I've now moved up, and I'm now a bit more senior. But first of all, I was a trainee, and I spent 3 months working at the BBC educational training establishment in Wood Norton, where you have an exam at the end of every week, and if you fail it, you're out and you lose your job. And you do this for 3 months, and you learn all the skills that you need to become a technical person within the BBC. They don't do that now, but it was a very good training in TV. So many people ask me what I do, and there may be, and I might have to make a call in a minute. One of my colleagues who I work with a lot, Sarah Farmer, may come on the call, and you will recognise her because she does the weather and she's done lots of things, and that's really nice. But I'm behind the scenes, and I'm basically I come up with the ideas for features for South Today. So I will, like for Christmas, we're working on what we're going to do for the outside broadcast that we're going to do on the last programme before Christmas. And so we're working on that. We're going to the Lexicon in Bracknell, a shopping centre, to film the Christmas lights. I'm talking to a gospel choir because we're going to have a gospel. We're going to have a carol to play out the programme. We do the same things most years, and it's my job to reinvent it, come up with the idea. But basically, I'm behind the scenes. I come up with the ideas. I work with reporters such as Sarah and cameramen, and we come up with the ideas, and then I'll edit them. And so my job is kind of it's behind the scenes, but very rewarding. And when you get a story that really works, it's fantastic. And I'll show you some of those in a minute. The first one I want to show you is, I'm just going to share the screen out to. This is a story. You can see that now. And I'm just going to bring it back to the beginning. Does everybody here remember Raham Khan? Just give me a nod or a yes, or I can only see some of you.
Yes.
Basically, Raham Khan was a weather person that we got in probably around about 2010. Well, this film that you're seeing, we made for the South of England show in Ardingly. And as you can see, she's cooking sausages to be sold at the South of England show. The thing was, she never told me that she was a Muslim, and that basically when she went back to Pakistan after she left the BBC, this film got shown really, really widely. It was one of the most watched films in Pakistan because she was doing this thing of eating pork sausages when she shouldn't. And I'm just going to go back to stopping to share. And it's probably my most famous film, and I had absolutely nothing to do with it, and it didn't become famous till about 4 or 5 years after she'd gone. Now I can see you all. Do you all recognise Raham? Was she? I'm going to play a little bit of the. I've got her leaving film, which I made. She even wrote her own book of her time in England and the BBC. Now she's in Pakistan a lot. And we're mentioned in it, and it's quite bizarre. If I meet famous people, and whether I've seen, what it's like meeting. We had Tony Blair turn up to the studio once, and he's a lot smaller than he looks, and his handshake wasn't very firm. But one of the things whenever people ask me what's the most powerful thing you've ever seen, is probably what I'm going to show you next. And to set it up in context, this was a film we were making about a musical that had been written about Theresienstadt. Now, Theresienstadt, for those that may not know, was one of the concentration camps, but it was for the artistic members of the Jewish community. And it was being done by a youth theatre in Guildford. And as part of their research into this, they actually met one of the camp survivors, who was this amazing chap, and he began to tell this story. Now, the interesting thing about it is when you make television, you have to make decisions and you have to make choices. And when we was hearing this lecture, rather than focus on him, we focused on the audience. And for me, when I heard this little story, it was one of the most powerful things I've ever heard. And it's probably about 5 or 6 years old now, this clip, but it's still the most powerful thing I've ever heard. So please bear with me, and I'm going to try and get it here for you. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yep, got it.
And we're taken into this tunnel, and we lined this tunnel, and I mean this tunnel was dimly lit. It had a cable that went across with an occasional light dangling down. And I had a little girl whose hand I held on my right, and another little girl whose hand I held on my left. And the tunnel seemed to go on that way, and then it went round a bend. But this way it seemed to go on forever. And I remember so clearly, we did this in complete silence, little children. And then a little box came along, from person to person to person, to the little girl on my right, who gave it to me, and I gave it to the little girl on my left. Each box contained the ashes of the dead of Theresienstadt. And in true German efficiency, each box was labelled with the name of the person whose ashes it contained, their date and place of birth, and their date and place of death. And every now and then, either upstream or downstream, you heard the noise, the quiet sobbing of a child who's holding in its hands the ashes of their mother or their father or a brother or a sister, until they were nudged to pass it on. The Germans were throwing it all these ashes into the river to get rid of the evidence before the Russians arrived.
It's very hard when we make television programs we try and be distanced from it, but from that, that was just, what was interesting was, I felt you learnt more from looking at the reaction of the children's faces than you did of the person who was speaking. And he was just to be honest, I've forgotten his name, but he absolutely fantastic speaker who's very, very good at doing this, and actually had a brilliant photograph taken by him by Kate Middleton, because he's quite a well-known concentration camp survivor. But the most amazing story, and the kids really learned so much from it, and it was a privilege to be there and see that. On a lighter note, I'm going to show you a clip. When we had the introduction, you mentioned about in 2012 I had to do a half-hour documentary about the Titanic and the effects that it had on Southampton. And we by this point everyone was doing documentaries on Southampton, but nobody was doing really about what happened in Southampton. And for those that know or have been to the Sea City Museum, which hadn't been open by the point we were making the documentary, practically every street in Southampton had some effect, and all the relatives would rush down to Canute Road to see who had died. So I'm going to show you a little bit of my documentary and then tell you a little bit of a story about it. So just bear with me. I'm just going to get the clip up. It's quite a nice little documentary.
I wouldn't be here today telling the story.
It was Monday morning in Canute Road, Southampton, when word started to reach the White Star Line Company office via telegrams that Titanic had been in a collision. Rumours spread throughout the town like wildfire. Women from all over the city headed for the only place where they thought they would get reliable news: the White Star offices.
My name is Philip Curry.
So I'll just stop that there. That was all shot on Canute Road one Sunday morning. We had over 100 extras. We had 3 cameras. We had loads of people stopping the traffic and all of this. Now you saw that board, and what happened was that I was directing it, and I delegated responsibility to 2 work experience people, and said to them, what I want some names up on the board. Don't give me any well-known ones or whatever. I just want random names up on there. Use your intuition. I need loads of names so that people can come up. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a camera on a jib, so one of those ones with a big arm, and we're going to follow people in, and we'll see all the follow them in as they rush into the board. And we did all the shots, and everyone was happy. And the person I was working for was our news editor, who is a complete and utter Titanic buff. He knows everything about Titanic, and was really happy that it felt real. They all dressed in the right way, as you can see from that. And it wasn't till the end of the shoot, which had been about a 2-hour shoot, that I looked up and I saw the immortal words Nobby Stiles, and then I saw the words George Best, Bobby Charlton, and one of the work experience people had put the '66 World Cup on there, and a number of other famous footballers that he really liked as well. But I happened to have gone to school with Nobby Stiles' son, so the name kind of clicked something in my head. I'm not a football fan, but when I suddenly, and I saw George Best was in there, and I know he wasn't in the '66, but he was obviously the guy's a bit keen on Man United. So we then panicked, because then we looked at all the footage, and I had to ring up the work experience boy and say, you do realise it's going to cost me about £3,000 to get digitally changed. And the poor boy who wanted to get into the industry, I think he rang a colleague of mine in tears and said, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? And they just thought they were being funny, but you know, such is life. In the end, we managed to reshoot some close-ups, which are used later. And we, as you can see, we cut around it and we didn't use the shot that I wanted. But the blood ran cold in my veins when I looked up and I read all those names. And I don't think I ever want to see those names ever on a board again. I just thought it'd be quite nice, rather than hear me all the time. Sarah's going to try and come on the call as well. So, and Sarah, at least you recognise Sarah because she does the weather. So just bear with me. And then what I'm going to show you, you can see here, hopefully the sound is not, you can still see me. These are the shots that we take before you see them on air. This is about a week. The guy in the front there with the blue t-shirt is Kevin Bird. He was the technical person. That's where we are. We're on the Needles Lighthouse in August. And it was a very, very calm day. We all had to bring changes of clothing because they said we had to be prepared because we might be there for 2 or 3 days. The guy in the white t-shirt is Trevor Adamson, who's the cameraman, and there's Sarah there as well. And hopefully I'm going to leave that going. I'm just going to stop sharing. You can see how far away it is. Basically, this was a couple of years ago. And once Sarah can get it, Sarah is waiting. Brilliant.
No, I'm sorry, I'm late.
Timing is perfect. So I was just explaining a bit about the needles, and what I was thinking was that if I share these pictures, which you will remember of these, can you just talk a little bit from your perspective about what it was like going up there?
Yeah. Oh, well, this was a huge day and a very memorable one. We got a little rib speedboat across the Solent and arrived at the rocks, had to kind of steadily climb out. And actually, you can just make out someone climbing up the stairs at the very top there and peeking through the hatch. So it was obviously a winding staircase to go up to the top. And Pete, I think that is you in the hatch.
Yes, I don't like heights.
Yes, so you weren't keen to come out, were you?
You and Trevor were like gazelles running around that thing, but I really struggled.
I'm not sure gazelles is the word, but once you're up there, because the wind was so still on that day, it wasn't too terrifying. And obviously we stayed fairly central, didn't go too close to the edge, but there we go. This is me listening to talk back and hearing what the satellite.
I can hear you.
Saying. So they're testing the signal. This was quite a big deal at the time to make sure we could have that live connection all the way from the island, which just behind Trevor's hand in a minute you will see the satellite truck somewhere in the distance, which was picking up these signals. So yeah, it was a lovely still day, which worked in our favour in that there wasn't any wind. However, we did have flying ants, which was a very surreal experience. There we go. There's Pete.
Yeah, I didn't cope with it well. So flying ants, you wouldn't know with Sarah's performance on the weather that the ants were crawling all the way through her hair. And she got so much kudos from everyone else because everyone behind her was kind of going, like this. You can't see me, but oh, that's a nice one of Kevin. Pulling his trousers up.
1, 2, 3.
So we can't do this really without Trevor and Kevin. I'm just going to stop sharing because I like that. Can you just explain how it all works, Sarah, about me and Trevor and you and what we do?
Yeah, we're really lucky actually that we will often end up on projects together. So obviously a lot of what is broadcast in South Today will be a same day news package. It may be something that's set up the day before, but it's very much something that is has a timing, has a hook to it, and people will go out on the day, they'll be dispatched, they'll come back, they'll turn it around, and it's broadcast that evening. Some of what we get to do are the sort of longer form pieces and the packages which take a little bit more crafting, and the material that you get to sort of build on for a little bit longer and work a little bit more, I suppose, in a bit more detail. So we get to do a bit more featurey material, I think is where I'm trying to go. So we get lots of lovely opportunities to meet people who are characters who've done something unusual, or go to places which are unusual, like the top of the lighthouse. And we will often do a package, but also do a live broadcast as well. So the day that you saw there, the day of the Needles Lighthouse broadcast, was one where we did it all in one day. We went into the former lighthouse keeper's house and saw all of the rooms and how they were preserved, and did a bit of a tour via a film, and then we did our live broadcast from the top, which was just an incredible privilege to do, really. But Trevor and Pete and myself all work very well together. It gets to that point where you don't necessarily need to say something, and all of us seem to have that same wavelength, and we click together and know where we're going. Occasionally we have our disagreements or differences in opinion, but no, most of the time we work quite quickly hand in hand, which is really nice.
Trevor's really calm, and he's like, he doesn't say much, but when he does, everyone takes notice, and it's very different, because I'm much more gobby, and it's kind of bad, isn't it? It's a strange balance. I was showing, before you came online, I showed the terracing clip.
Oh yeah.
What was your feelings when you were there? Because that was so powerful, wasn't it?
It's just incredible to be witness to those kind of moments, really, and a real privilege to get to meet these characters. Other characters that you and I have been to meet, Pete, are the Normandy, the D-Day landing guys. When we met Harry Reid, who was just phenomenal and did a parachute jump at the age of 95 or 96. And so again, just a wonderful character to meet, very humbling to hear those experiences so many years ago, and just lovely, charming, kind gentleman as well.
Behind the scenes, the Normandy trip was basically 4 of us went out there. Normally they send a lot of people, and there was a lot of BBC people out there, but for South Today there was just myself, Sarah, a lady called Dolly, and my son, who is training to be a cameraman. And we started, I think it must have been midnight the night before, didn't we, at the bridge. Where's the bridge? The
Pegasus
Bridge, that's the one. So we managed to do that, and then we got up early, and my son managed to get the Piper Mullen. They reenacted the Piper Mullen bit of D-Day, and Sebastian has this. He has this gift of not really of just being in the moment, and basically he did a track back using this bit of camera equipment called a gimbal, which I have here, if you can see it. And he just basically walked back in the beach, and people just parted like waves. And there's this amazing shot where everyone's just kind of, he just did this amazing thing. And we had all this wonderful footage. And then we were in Arromanches, weren't we?
Yes.
And turns out they have broadband, but the numbers of people who were using everything meant that the broadband just fell over. And that was, what time was that? We'd done the lunchtime, hadn't it? So it was about 2 or 3 o'clock, wasn't it, when nothing actually worked. And then we had to try and edit the film and send it back to Southampton. And then Sarah was going to be live on air. And none of the BBC people there, and there was a ton of them, were talking to us, were they? All the broadband had gone. And the night before, I stuck next to one of the BBC vans, and my laptop seemed to, at 1 o'clock in the morning, I was trying to send some pictures back for the breakfast bulletin, just by standing close to the van and using the Wi-Fi, but it was probably one of the most stressful things. Can you remember how long? What were you? Because I was doing the film, and you were trying to get the live element, weren't you?
Yeah, so I obviously had to prepare the live material as well while Pete was doing the edit. But that also involved trying to establish our slot. So the satellite truck that was available was a national one, which had Sophie Rayworth, for example, who was doing the main 6 o'clock news. So we had to wait our turn to be allowed up there. On this platform. They'd erected scaffolding outside one of the hotels. So I had to go and find where it was. I had to go and find what time we were able to get in there, and I had to make sure that we had all the contact details. So I was doing a lot of the jobs, the sort of production jobs that would ordinarily be taken care of if we had our own satellite facilities out there. And so managing to make sure we had all the communication as well, and getting the earpiece set up so that it was going back to our Southampton newsroom. So this
lots of memorials and tributes, paying tribute to those.
Sorry, I just thought I'd do that.
That's all right. You can see the platform that I'm standing on. You can see the scaffolding. So yes, trying to set all of that up, and of course, because the 6 o'clock news were finishing with some Normandy coverage, it wasn't as though we could have plenty of time to get up there and get settled. We had to wait our turn, and it was literally a bit of a relay, really, a tag team, one in, one out. So we managed to get our slot, and I was standing there, and I hear my producer for the first time just as we're about to go on air, and she tells me, "Sarah, your package isn't here yet. If it doesn't make, you'll have to fill for an extra 4 minutes," which in the land of news, 4 minutes is an incredibly long time. And with very little preparation time to turn around and say, "Oh, what will I fill that 4 minutes with?" Right, okay, 4 minutes to fill. If I have to, I'll talk about what we did last night and the footage and Pegasus Bridge and what we've seen this morning. So I will recap what we've got in the film that we've made, although not quite as articulately, I'm sure, as we had in the film with all the footage. So anyway, the package then made by the skin of its teeth, but while we were on the package, there was a power cut. Now, normally a power cut wouldn't impact us, but the satellite truck had used a power supply from a local kitchen, and this makes it sound really shoddy. They had plugged into a power supply in the kitchen of this hotel that we were working from, and apparently the problem was that the fuse they had fitted was the wrong type of fuse in this plug socket, and it just overheated. The whole thing cut out. The power went down on the satellite truck, and of course our live facility went down. So while we were on the package, the Southampton newsroom lost our connection. So while that was happening, Southampton newsroom throw to their correspondents who were in the UK. So they were talking to, I think it was James Ingham, who was possibly at Southwark House. And then eventually they managed to get the connection back up. So they came back to us. But it was one of those broadcasts. I don't think I can think of another more adrenaline-packed broadcast that I've been involved in, because there was so much that nearly went wrong, did go wrong. We had to change and think quickly on our feet. But equally, one of the most memorable for that honour of being there and that privilege to be part of the storytelling. So I
think I got the film in within 30 seconds before you actually set into it. I think you'd almost started by the time they'd actually turned it around in Southampton, I think you were on your link.
Yeah.
Can I ask you both how COVID is affecting you? I mean, it must be having a huge effect, mustn't it, on the way you do things?
Do you want to start, Pete, or shall I?
Well, it is making an effect. The latest one we had, Sarah and I did a film which you will see next week about a school in Lymington called Priestlands, and they're doing some filming inside Shakespeare. Brilliant story, but we had to kind of get clearance so that we could film inside, because at the moment people are not sure whether we can do that or not. And we're going to film next Tuesday some poinsettias in a huge poinsettia greenhouse, which should be fun because we're going to fly a drone in it, and that's the bit that we're really excited about. But we had to get clearance for that. At the moment, during the summer, it was fine doing interviews outside. The issue for us really is that we just don't want to make anything worse. So, and you don't know with this whether or not you have it and you're non-symptomatic. So we have to keep our distance. And like in the summer, I did what was it? I did VE Day. I think it was VE Day. Yes, it was. And we were really nervous about getting close to any of the veterans. So it's just those kinds of worries that we have really. We've got mics that you've now seen the fluffy mic in every shot. What's your take on it, Sarah?
The location work, you notice the difference a lot more. So when you're out and about and talking to people, there are many more restrictions that we obviously have to follow, the guidelines, the government guidance, but also the BBC guidelines as well. And then making sure that we're not in people's personal space beyond that as well. So, different people have different expectations. So that does change the way when you're out on the road a little bit. In terms of in the studio, the building has a lot of COVID measures in place. So we arrive, we have a temperature check, we have a one-way system in place. We are encouraged to wear masks in the building, but it's not obligatory. And the desks have been changed so that we're sitting in alternate seats and 2 meters apart and all of that. But other than those things, which I think you adjust to quite quickly, and we're all, at the beginning, the one-way system was a bit of a maze and you had to remember where you were going, whereas now it's autopilot to go to the studio round the loop. So it does feel like working to a smaller team, because of course half the people have been either working from home or they're working in different offices around the building. So it feels much smaller. It feels like a weekend skeleton staff where we have fewer people on, but still producing the same style of program, I think.
I was going to ask how you manage that, because it must be quite demanding, mustn't it?
I think it can be on the producers. Probably the quickest solution for them is to extend packages. So we have fewer reporters, therefore instead of running half a dozen 2-minute reports, you might get 2.5 minutes, but there are fewer reports within the program. So you might notice longer elements if you are watching that whole half-hour program. And just the limitations of people not wanting to come face to face and not wanting to be potentially exposed or at risk or whatever. So fewer people, maybe not, people might not want to be face to face, but they often will do these kind of chats instead. So the dynamics of what you see in terms of the interviews is changing because we have access via Zoom to be able to chat to people.
Yes.
So different feel.
Yes. And any other questions? I'm sure people have got lots of questions. Could you put your hand up?
Well, whilst you're thinking about that, I'm going to show you one other thing that will bring back some memories for Sarah. Just bear with me. I just need to do that and do that. You see that do you want to tell? I have a bit of a reputation for trying to kill my presenters because I keep sending them up in various places. But that was a great fun, wasn't it?
It was a lovely day. I was feeling a little bit nervy before I got attached to the top of the aeroplane. But once we got going, it actually was a huge amount of fun, and just became one of those pieces that. It was actually a piece teeing up the air show, so the air festival in Bournemouth, each year we cover it, and each year we try and think of a different way of introducing it and showcasing some of their amazing pilots and acts that they have on. And that year we had the opportunity to do the wing walk, which was just incredible. So there was a role, I think, at once. Was there a role in this one, or is that the other one? I can't remember. But it was a bank.
I do remember the bit of advice that they gave you.
Oh, don't open your mouth. You'll get flies on your teeth, was what they told me.
Oh.
I couldn't stop smiling and screaming, as you said.
Questions, people?
Well, I've got a question for Sarah. What out of all the ones you've done, what's been the what have you enjoyed the most?
Oh, that's hard. That's
Yeah.
so hard.
It has to be one that I've done with Trevor. Just
I fondly think back to Bournemouth Airshow one where we did the parachute jump, and for me it kind of encapsulates what we do, because the parachute jump happened on the Friday and we did a big, fun, excitable live, and it was a great joy to be a part of. But then, as the journalist in me, on I think it was the Saturday or the Sunday, there was that terribly tragic accident where the Red Arrows pilot lost his life, and I was called on to go and speak to his widow, which was so incredibly moving. And so that, for me, is my absolute most memorable moment in my career, I think, was that extreme of covering the stories.
I remember seeing that. Yes, it was moving. Yeah. Maurice, you had a question.
It's not a question, Peter, but just a point about the Titanic, because I knew Bert and Milvina Dean, who were survivors of that incident.
Wow.
And Bert made us a cabinet for our cricket club at Calmore. Milvina lived at Woodlands, and there's a little close named after her around there.
Wow.
Oh, that's a lovely tale.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters they were.
The problem was, by the time we got to do the documentary, Malvina had gone. So we managed to get some footage that South Today had talked to her about. We did as part of that documentary, we put a call out that if anybody had any stories about their connections to Titanic, to come in, and we thought, oh well, there'll be one or two, and we'll do it on a Saturday, and they'll all come in and talk. I think we had 160 people come in. We had 4 or 5 teams of people by the end of it. The news editor, who was a complete Titanic nut, went ballistic because he thought that from a health and safety point of view we were going to get into real problems. And then we had to kind of rework it. But we had so many people come through, and what we did was we filmed as many as we could, and then we had Titanic experts some of them clearly had improved or changed over the period of time, and perhaps weren't quite as accurate as the experts could say. But we kept them all because we just thought that was our duty to the people of Southampton, is to kind of get all these stories and try and keep them. It was an enjoyable thing to do. You weren't. No,
I wasn't.
No, well, yes, yeah. That was one of your off moments, I think, because I think you'd been there by that point, but
I think I might have been on maternity leave, actually.
Yeah, I think so. It all kind of blurs a bit into one. I can't remember when. Any other questions? This is your opportunity. I'm the most indiscreet person in the BBC. Ask me anything.
Peter, have you ever asked a presenter to do something that they thought was too crazy? You said you like doing crazy and
well, Alexis, who is lovely, I did make her do the Wall of Death, and we had a big argument with health and safety because the guy that does the Wall of Death said don't wear a helmet because actually they're more dangerous doing it than not, and we had to try and convince the health and safety people that we were going to do it without a helmet because we've been advised to. And that gets very tricky because they go, well, you must wear a helmet, and the guy came up with very good reasons why you shouldn't. And if you ever see, he does it a lot with presenters, and he's very practiced at being able to explain why it's much better not to have one for particular reasons.
I think we've kept you now for well over an hour. I think.
Okay, sorry.
I think the time has come to say thank you, and I think Alistair's going to do that. Alistair.
He's disappeared.
Thank you, Peter.
Yes.
Well, I think this has been an. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. This has been one of our more unusual Zoom meetings, for which I'd like to thank Pete and Sarah from South Today. Fascinating to hear how 3 weeks turned into 30 years in Pete's case. Clearly something's been going well. And quite what a range of things you've told us about, from becoming a hit YouTube type video in Pakistan. I'm not sure that would have been all that fun. I thought the clip from what was it? It was called Terezin Trail, I think, wasn't it? The clip that you showed us from was very good. And also almost placing the 1966 World Cup team on the Titanic. That would have been quite an achievement. Some of the clips you've shown us, like the top of the Needles Lighthouse, the Sarah on the what's it called, the wing walk. We didn't see the parachute jump, but you clearly do put your colleagues through the meat grinder, but it works. And when you told us quite a lot about one or two where things technically hadn't been so straightforward, there was a possibility of Sarah having to extemporize for 4 minutes. What I'm quite sure is that none of your viewers would have noticed there was anything wrong. So what I'd like to do is to thank you very much on behalf of Southampton Magna Rotary Club. Thank both of you, and wish you well for the rest of this rather bizarre time that we're all living through. Thanks again, and could I ask all my colleagues to join me in thanking you in the traditional way?